All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started here. Can everybody hear me? Was not expecting to have to use the mic. I can usually talk pretty loud, but it's a great turnout. Appreciate everybody being here. So my name is Chase McDonald. I am the Assistant State Engineer over the Adjudication Program for the state of Utah. I work for the State Engineer, otherwise known as the Division of Water Rights. And we are here tonight to talk about the adjudication process and specifically as it relates to Gould Wash, which is Area 81, Book 4. So we'll talk about why you got the summons. I've heard multiple people mention that they got a summons. We'll talk about that. We'll talk through the adjudication process, you know, what you can all expect, and each step of that, the timeline, and then we'll be happy to take questions. Before I really dive into it, if at any point any of you decide, oh, this doesn't apply to me, and you want to get up and head out, you're not going to offend me, because it may not affect everybody. But on that note, we'll talk about the summons. So why did we send a summons? You know, a lot of you might have said, I don't have a water right. Why did I get a summons? First of all, the adjudication process is governed by statute. You know, we have a whole bunch of criteria, a whole bunch of steps that we have to take. One of those is sending out summons to every known water right holder on our records, as well as all the landowners within the subdivision boundary. And that's really meant to make sure that everybody who needs to participate is aware of what we're doing and participates. You know, we want to get the word out to everybody. Hey, we're out here, we're going through this process. You know, come to the meeting and find out more about it, see if it's something you need to participate in. It was also published in the local newspaper. Some of you may have seen it there. So next question is probably, what is an adjudication? What does that mean? And the basics of it, it's an action in a state district court. It joins and binds all of the water users in the area with the state engineer. And as I said, it's governed by Title 73, Chapter 4 of the Utah Code. And the point of the general adjudication is to evaluate the nature and extent of all of the water rights in each drainage and bring any water rights not on the state engineer's records onto the record. So I'll start, before we talk about the actual process, we'll talk about why we conduct these, and I'll give you a little bit of history. So settlement of the state of Utah, at least the early pioneers, got to the Salt Lake Valley around 1847. But Utah didn't become a state until 1896. Of course, the first thing that anybody does when they go in and settle a new area, what do? They develop the water sources, right? So there was about 50 years of development of water use before Utah became a state. And like I said, Utah became a state in 1896. To further complicate it a little bit, water right laws, as we know them today, didn't really come on the books until 1903, were the earliest comprehensive water laws. So when Utah became a state, the Utah Constitution was created, and there was only one sentence in the Utah Constitution that related to water rights, and that was Article 17, as you see on the screen there. It says, all existing rights to the use of any of the waters in this state for any useful or beneficial purpose are hereby recognized and confirmed. You notice it didn't say defined, it didn't say quantified, any of that. It basically what that said is, if you are using water, we are going to be putting these water laws together and creating a system for this, but you are grandfathered in. So if you're using water, continue to use water, you have a recognized and confirmed water right, but they didn't quantify it at the time. There's some additional history that I'm not really going to go into, but they created the adjudication program a long time ago. Obviously, it's evolved over time, but here we are over 100 years later, because way back then, even though they had the best of intentions, for a long time it didn't get funded. So we're kind of playing catch up. So as I've said, we're trying to, one of the main goals is to bring all of those water rights onto the record. Because like I said, they were recognized and confirmed, but they were never documented, they were never quantified. So that's one of the main things that we're trying to do, is bring those rights onto the record. That's what the adjudication program was created to do. Now talking about these pre-statutory claims, diligence claims is so we have what is called a diligence claim, and that refers to surface waters that were in use prior to 1903. Okay, so in 1903, a law was passed saying now if somebody wants to develop a new water use, they need to file an application with the state engineer. But water prior to 1903 from a surface source, again, falls under that kind of grandfathered water right. And a diligence claim now is an actual form that is a mechanism used to bring those on the record outside of an adjudication area. Okay, and then in 1935, that water law was expanded to include underground water. So you see there, 1935 underground water claims, they created a mechanism. So any water use from an underground source that was put to use prior to 1935 can be brought onto the record by filing an underground water claim. And over time, it wasn't required for those applications or those claims to be filed. Again, the premise of the adjudication is, okay, we're going to put this program together to go out and take bite-sized portions of the state and evaluate those rights and bring them on the record. Okay. A couple other things that we do in the adjudication, we quantify Federal Reserve rights as well. A Federal Reserve right comes from the Winters Doctrine, which was a court case that found that when the federal government sets aside a piece of land, it inherently reserves or implicitly reserves sufficient water to meet the needs of that land. Okay, so these are, think of military installations, Indian reservations, national forests, things like that. So what we're really trying to do is increase the clarity of the water rights picture. I used to say, and sometimes I guess I'm about to say, an adjudication is essentially a court process that updates all the water rights on the records. Okay, so that's I do kind of apologize for the summons. It freaks a lot of people out, but it's just part of the process that we have to go through. And so we're just trying to bring clarity to the water rights picture. The part that really freaks people out is that second to last bullet point that says, remove and reduce rights which have been wholly or partially forfeited through non-use. A little bit more background on that. So in Utah, water is owned by the public. It's a public good. Okay? A water right is treated as real property, but the water itself is owned by the public. And so the point of forfeiting water rights through non-use, the idea behind that is it's a finite resource, especially in this state. So if somebody is not putting that water to use, they shouldn't be able to sit on it forever, monopolize that, and sell it. If somebody's not using that water, it should be available for somebody else to put to beneficial use. That's the theory behind that. Okay. And the end goal of the adjudication is to obtain final comprehensive decrees on all water rights within the respective drainage. So like I said, this is a process through the district court. So ultimately there will be a court decree on all the water rights in the area. So moving on, we'll talk about what is a water right. So like I said, water in Utah, water belongs to the public. And when you have a water right, that means that you have a right to divert and put that water to beneficial use. And so in statute, it is defined by, it says a water right is defined by the beneficial use. Okay, so when we talk about what is a water right, it's the right to divert water from a point of diversion and apply it to some beneficial use at the approved place of use. It's a really basic way of thinking about water rights. It is not a share in an irrigation company or water provided by a municipality. So in those cases, the municipality, be it, a water conservancy district, a city, a county, whatever, they have their water rights, or an irrigation company, they have a portfolio of water rights that folks have shares in. For speaking specifically for an irrigation company, you own a share in that irrigation company, which entitles you to use a proportionate amount of that company's underlying rights. Okay. So, and to touch on the municipality part again, like if you get your water from a city or something like that, you have no other source, the city's water rights will be adjudicated through this process. It's not going to affect your municipal supply. Okay. One thing that is important when talking about what is a water right is, typically folks who have a water right, they know that they have a water right. They typically have some kind of diversion structure, be it a well, a diversion box, something like that they have to maintain. And you usually know. And then, like I said, that does not include shares in an irrigation company. So speaking more about irrigation shares and share statements, as I've already said, if your right is based on ownership of shares in a local irrigation company, you typically don't need to file a water user's claim. Okay, and we'll talk more about what that is in a second. But the irrigation company will file claims on their portfolio of water rights, and that, your shares are part of that portfolio. So we deal with the irrigation company there. Some examples there is there listed Virgin Canal Company, Hurricane Canal Company, Holland Grafton, St. George and Washington, Rockville. Those are just some examples in this area. So here is the Gould Wash Division boundary. On the south side, you see there, it's the state line. On the east side is the county line. The north and northeast it mostly follows Zion National Park, and then the Hurricane Cliffs on the west side. That's kind of the general area, but you can see it there on the map. We only have 545 water rights on our records. As I said, there may be pre-statutory water rights that we don't have on our records, and that's part of what we're doing here is trying to get a claim on those so we can evaluate those and get them on the record. Okay, so this is what the adjudication process looks like. We try to break it down into 3 phases. So that first phase is we're kind of on the tail end of that first phase, which is step 1 is petition to court to open an adjudication. That step has been done across the entire state. So what we started with here is that second step, which is the notice of commencement. So some of you may have seen that in the newspapers a few weeks ago. Then we send out those summons that we've already talked about. That summons also goes in the paper. Now we're at the first public meeting. The whole intent of this public meeting is just to inform you as to what the adjudication process is and if and how you need to participate in that process. Okay. And then phase 2 is the list of unclaimed rights, which we'll talk about more in a little bit. And then phase 3 is the proposed determination and the final decree from the court. So this first phase, as I said, we've already done the petition. That's done across the entire state. We sent that notice of commencement in the newspaper. We sent the summons. Here we are at the initial public meeting. The last step of this phase, in 3 weeks, we will be sending out a notice to file claims. And again, that will be going out to all of the water right owners of record, as well as all of the property owners within the boundary, okay? And once we send out that notice to file claims, everybody has 90 days to complete their claim and send it back to us. And that is the single most important step in this process for water users is this step. When we send out that claim, there's 90 days to file the claim back with our office or with the court. And you need to make sure if you have a water right or you have, even if it's not on the record, you need to file that claim. If somebody, for whatever reason, if the claimant does not participate and doesn't file a claim, they may be prevented from asserting that claim in the future. Okay, so it's really important to get those claims in. This is what those water user claims look like. So the one in the foreground there, that is what one would look like if you are an owner of record of a water right, or if it is a water right of record. We will have the information filled out based on what is on our records. Okay. The one in the background there is, you see there's a bunch of blanks. That is what we send to property owners. We say, we don't have a water right of record in your name, but you own property here. So here's a blank claim. If you have a water right that you would like to file a claim on, fill this out and send it to us. Okay. One thing I want to make very, very clear at this point is we understand that this is a complicated process. We understand water rights can be confusing. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We have a number of staff, which I just realized I forgot to introduce all of our staff that's here. But we have a pretty big section. The adjudication section is pretty large. We have a bunch of employees, plus we have people here from the regional office located in Cedar City. And we're more than happy to talk to you about these and help you fill out your claims. Okay. And yeah, so as it says there, any claim that is filed with our office, as a courtesy, we will file that for you with the court. Okay. We only adjudicate what we call perfected water rights. Okay. And that's, I don't want to go into too much detail there, but it's certificated rights, decreed rights, and diligence claims. If you're unsure, if you have a water right, like let's say you filed what's called an application to appropriate and it's been approved, but you haven't filed proof of beneficial use on that to get a certificate, it is not a perfected right. It won't be included in the adjudication unless you want it to. If you're in that boat, I'm not going to explain the whole process here, but give us a call. We can help you through that. Okay. If you have any questions, you can call us. Or if you're like, hey, I don't know if I have a water right on my property, I'll give a website tour a little bit later to show you how to use our map software and that to search for water rights. But main point of this slide, please don't hesitate to contact us. We want to try to help you through this. Okay. And as I've already touched on there at the bottom, irrigation company shareholders are not required to submit a claim. Okay, you can if you want, you don't have to. And if you're in that boat, again, talk to us and we can help you through that. So that's the end of phase one. Like I said, that notice to file claims. Okay. So after that 90 days, plus there's a 30-day extension that we'll talk about a little bit later. But after that initial claim filing period and the extension, we will start combing through those claims. And what we will do is we'll look at all of our rights of record and compare that to all the claims that we receive. And any water rights that are on our record that have not had a claim filed on them, we will compile those into what's called the list of unclaimed rights. Okay, exactly what it sounds like. And those unclaimed rights, we will submit to the court, and the court, we'll publish that list of unclaimed rights. We'll send out notice to everybody. That's the important thing. We will notify everybody. You'll be able to see all the rights that are on that list. And then there's 90 days from the time that we publish that list of unclaimed rights. There's 90 days for anybody to object to any of those rights on that list. And that objection is through the court. Okay? But you see there, step 8, there's another public meeting. So shortly after we publish the list of unclaimed rights, we'll be right back out here doing this again to say, hey, here's what we've done so far. Here's what's left to happen. Here's how to file an objection, and, you know, just kind of update you with where we're at. Again, this is a long, complicated process. We want to help you out. We want to help you understand it. But to kind of back up a little bit, so we take all those claims, we compile a list of any claims, any rights on our record that did not have a claim filed, put those on, or compile all those into the list of unclaimed rights, submit that to the court. Then there's 90 days to object. Again, like I said, we'll come out here and chat with you about that with another public meeting. We'll do a final summons. So we'll search all the records again. That's our records and property records to see if anything has changed hands, if there's anybody else that we need to, first of all, anybody we missed the first time, or if there's any new claimants that have come up, and we'll send out another summons. Once that is all complete and we work through any objections that were filed, we will motion the court to decree that list. And once that list is decreed, two things will happen. First, all the rights on that list will be decreed as abandoned. And second, that bars anybody from asserting a pre-statutory claim or filing a claim on pre-statutory water use. Okay? I'm going to turn this off, grab a drink. 1 second. All right. So that is the end of phase 2, the list of unclaimed rights. So then we move to phase 3, which is by far the most time-consuming portion of this process for us. Because what we'll do is when we receive all those claims and we generate that list of unclaimed rights, we'll go out and we will evaluate every single one of those claims that we received. Whether they're on our record or not, we'll go out and evaluate them. What that looks like is we will look at our paper files. We'll do a file review of the history of that water right. Then we'll go out in the field and we'll verify the point of diversion, the beneficial uses, the place of use, all the attributes of that water right. And then we will prepare what's called the state engineer's recommendation. It looks kind of like a water user's claim, but a state engineer's recommendation, this is one of the only parts in this entire process that I'm talking about that is not statutorily required. That is a courtesy from us. We'll go out and evaluate the claim. We'll write a memo to accompany the SCR that says, hey, here's what we did, here's what we found, here is why we are making this recommendation, and we'll mail that out to the claimant, the water user. Okay, so you know, hey, this is our recommendation, this is how we got there. And at that point, we want to have a conversation with you. Did we miss anything? Did we get anything wrong? Okay, but we'll evaluate all of those claims and put together a recommendation for each of those claims that we received. We'll compile all of those together into a book that is called the proposed determination, and we will submit that proposed determination to the court. Okay? Once we publish that proposed determination and submit it to the court, that starts another 90-day objection period. And shortly after that proposed determination is published, we'll be out here again to do a public meeting and talk through the whole process again. Say, here's what we've done, here's what's left, here's how you file an objection, you know, and so you have as much information as you can, okay? So after that 90 days elapses, you know, and we will have had that public meeting on the early end of that 90-day period, but then we'll work through those objections, and once all of those are resolved, we will motion the court for an interlocutory decree on that proposed determination. Okay? I know I've thrown a lot at you, but that's the process in a nutshell. It's an interlocutory. So the question was, what was that last decree? So it's an interlocutory decree, and what that means. So there's, if I go back to this slide up here, so that smaller image on the right side with all those different colored polygons, those are general adjudications across the state. Okay, and we've made this Gould Wash Division. We've taken a smaller piece of that, and we are just working in this division. Like, this division will have its own proposed determination. Okay, an interlocutory decree is just, hey, we're going to do a decree on this piece of the larger general adjudication. Then once we work through each of these divisions and work through, whatever, if we need additional addenda or something like that, we'll do that. And then once the entire general adjudication, so in your case, that whole bottom left, the Virgin River general adjudication, we'll get a final decree on the entire general adjudication. Okay, so when I say interlocutory decree, it just means almost an intermediate decree for just this division. Okay. So I have some other things I want to talk through, but at this point, do we have any questions just about the process? Just about this right here. Okay. In the back there. So the question is, and I'm going to repeat, so a couple things I didn't mention. We are live streaming this, so we have people online as well. So I'm going to repeat the question for their sake. So the question is, what authority do we have to conduct a general adjudication? And the answer is, it's been in Utah law since shortly after Utah became a state, and it's an action through the district court. In terms of the other, how it fits into the other things that you spoke about, I'm not prepared to answer that right now, but it has been the adjudication process has been in Utah statute for over 100 years. So that is a good question. I don't know that I'm equipped to talk about all those specifics right now. Yeah, and I'd be happy to talk to you after the presentation. Yeah. Yeah, we understand there's concerns, and that's part of why we come out. We try to be transparent. As to that, I would defer to our attorneys as to more of the history and things like that. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. Yes, if you have a water right, you need to file a water user's claim during that claim filing period. Yes. Oh, sorry. The question was, yeah, thank you. I knew I was going to forget. The question was if somebody has filed an application with the state engineer and gotten a water right, do they still need to file a water user's claim? And the answer is yes. If you have a water right, you need to file a water user's claim through this process. And again, we're more than happy to help you out with that. Like I said, we only adjudicate perfected rights. So if you have a question, you say, I have a water right, I don't know if it's perfected or not, get in touch with us. We'll look at that and we'll let you know. Okay? Other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So we'll get to that a little bit later. The question was, you know, what if land and the water has passed down different generations or changed hands? The adjudication process does not update title, but anybody can file a claim whether your name is on our records or not. We'll get to that in a little bit. Do we have questions about just this process right now? I'm not saying that wasn't, but yes, sir. Okay, so the question was what happens to the water that does not get claimed? And I'll add to that. We've been asked before, like, oh, is the state going to auction off this water? No, the state, our office at least, you know, there are certain state entities that own water rights. Our office does not, but we're not going to. There's not going to be an auction of any unclaimed water, anything like that. As I said, water rights give somebody the right to use the water, but with a finite resource. If somebody is not putting that water to beneficial use, the intent of the law is that that water return to the public domain for somebody else to put to beneficial use. Yes, sir.
Who initiated the initial dispute on the water rights in this area, and why did they select that small area in Washington County as it looks discriminatory, you know?
Okay, so the question was who initiated this and who drew the boundary. Typically our office, the office of the state engineer, draws some of these boundaries. I know how this boundary was drawn. I'm not sure it was drawn before I was in this position. I know it's not a great answer, but it's our office does a lot of times draw these boundaries and create these smaller subdivisions. And we do that based on the hydrology in the area. So we try to keep rights within the same hydrologic system in the same division or subdivision, so they're evaluated together.
So is there a dispute on the water rights of that area?
Okay, the question was, is there a dispute on the water rights in the area? So I'll answer that kind of more generally. Most of these, I told you there's been a petition on everywhere in the state. So that first step has already been done everywhere in the state. And that typically came to be in one of two ways. Either there was a dispute, there was a lawsuit that grew in scope until it was petitioned to the court saying, hey, this lawsuit keeps growing. Can we do a general adjudication? Or just a bunch of water users coming together and petitioning the court and saying, hey, we want you to adjudicate these rights. So it would have been in one of those ways. There's not, to answer your question more specifically, there's not a specific dispute that I'm aware of that triggered this. Yes, sir. So the question was about, yeah, the question was about the Colorado River Compact, and how this fits into that. This is, I mean, this will play into that, but this process is done separately from the compact. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but this process is unique and separate from the Colorado, the actual operation of the Colorado River Compact, if that makes sense. Okay. Well, it's so the water use in this area does impact Utah's allocation of Colorado River Compact water, but we are not in the adjudication right now. We're not. We are going to evaluate each of the individual water rights, not really through the lens of the Colorado River Compact. So the question is, are we being challenged for beneficial use for the Colorado River Compact? And yes, I mean, I say yes, like our state, there's a lot of conversations going on right now with the Colorado River Compact and allocations and how that's going to work. My best answer for you right now is that this process is detached from that in the sense, like the Colorado River Compact is not going to weigh on how we evaluate these rights. We're going to look at them case by case, individual water rights, beneficial use, things like that. We evaluate them on their own merits. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, so the question was, is the Gould Wash Division within the Virgin River General Adjudication? And the answer is yes. It's a division within that general adjudication. Yes, sir.
How long has this process been taking?
Okay, yeah. That's one of my slides. We'll give you the anticipated timeline there. Okay, the question is, how do you buy, sell, and trade during this time? Proceed as usual. We understand this is a snapshot in time, and so we don't expect you to put everything on hold. We have review processes and things like that to catch changes leading up to when we publish the proposed determination. Okay? Yes, sir? Okay. So the question is, again, to elaborate on what happens to the unclaimed water. So the unclaimed water, we just essentially, if somebody's not using a water right and they don't file a claim on the right, then that right is considered abandoned because nobody filed a claim on it. And so just the paper water goes away. So what happens to the water? It becomes, it fulfills other existing water rights. The existing water rights in the system, like they're distributed based on priority date in the system and things like that. So, I'm sorry, what system? Well, there's several subsystems within this area. So, I mean, they're just the so when you say if someone doesn't claim it, it goes to somebody else to sell or something like that. It does not go to the state. It's just, so you have wet water and you have paper water. And in the case of an unclaimed water right, if there's paper water on our records and nobody files a claim on that, then that water I mean, we're just talking about paper water in that case, but that water will go to fulfill other water rights in the area. Okay. Yes, sir. Okay. So So the question again is on unclaimed water rights. So the question is, if it's not being auctioned off, how is it made available to others? So first of all, there's, water is finite. We're talking about paper water and wet water. So if somebody had a water right and stopped using that water, then in real life on the ground, that water is just available for others. And to try to help explain this a little bit better, there's if you're talking about an over appropriated system where there's more paper water than there is actual physical wet water in the system, paper water is just on our books. So okay, so when I say paper water versus wet water, a lot of what we do with water rights on the records is we create a budget. We say, okay, the safe yield in this area is X. We look at all the water rights on the records and say that is Y. And if the demand exceeds what's actually in the system, that is considered over appropriated. And in that case, that area would be closed to appropriations. If it's not an over appropriated area, then these unclaimed rights, that water just becomes available for people with vested existing water rights. And in some areas, somebody can file an application to appropriate to acquire a water right. It kind of depends on the area. Okay, you had your hand up for a while. So the question is, how do we evaluate if somebody's using their water right appropriately? So as I said, let me see if I can find the slide. So a water right has a defined nature of use, nature of beneficial use, a priority date, a quantity of water, a point of diversion, and a place of beneficial use. So when we do these evaluations, we go out and we say, okay, here is the point of diversion, here is the approved nature of use. Is that what it's being used for? Yes. Okay, great. If it's not, we'll usually just note that and say this is being used from an unauthorized point of diversion or something like that. But we're just going out and verifying that what is on our records is what's happening on the ground. So the question is, again, just reiterating what we look at in these evaluations. Yes, so we go out and we look at the approved beneficial uses, and we'll go out and look at the uses that are occurring on the ground. And yes, if there's a scenario where if a water right is not being put to full beneficial use, it may be recommended for partial forfeiture, saying you are approved for this many acres, you're using this many acres, so we are going to recognize how many you're using or how many have been used in the past 7 years. Because that's the statutory criteria. Is if a water right, it says in statute, if a water right or a portion of a water right has not been put to beneficial use for a period of 7 years, it may be subject to forfeiture.
So everyone that has a water right, are they going to have to go out and hire a proof engineer to prove up on them?
So the question is, will you have to hire a proof engineer? And the answer is no. That's our staff will come out and meet with you and look at your system, look at your beneficial use. You don't need to hire somebody if you don't want to. We can help you with that. Okay? All right. Oh, sorry, one second. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Okay, so 3 questions there. First, do we or will we send mail, certified mail? We don't, and there's no plan to. I'll ask you to repeat the second question, but the answer to the third question, where can you get these slides? So this PowerPoint presentation will be available on our website. I'll show you later. I'll do a website tour, show you where to find that. What was your second question? Okay, so the question was again, if a water right is not being put to full beneficial use, again, we'll look at things like, you know, how much of this water right has been used over the past 7 years, because that's the statutory criteria. And then another thing to keep in mind is when we publish our proposed determination, that is our recommendation to the court. So there's still that objection period where somebody can object to what our recommendation is, and we can work through it that way. And I want to point out again that when we go out and do an evaluation, we will write up a memo saying, hey, here's who we talked to, here's when we went out, here's what we found, and here's our recommendation. And we want to work with you. If we missed something, if we got something wrong, let us know, and we'll revisit it and we'll work with you. If a water right is being overused, we will typically just note that in our evaluation. Okay? Sure.
So, looking at your map, one of the times like how pipeline project, it would also be letters from the same time. What's the correlation between what the area of pipeline project, all of that, all of the state line coming down South Hall? It seems like it's kind of a coincidence that we're getting letters from both of you right now on the pipeline and the, without anybody explaining the correlation between these two issues.
Okay, so the question is, how does this tie into the Lake Powell pipeline? Yes, you've been getting notices related to that as well. This has nothing to do with the Lake Powell pipeline. We're completely separate from that. I didn't know that they sent anything to you about that. So, okay, sir. Oops. Okay, yeah, so the question is again related to unclaimed or forfeited rights. And so when we say a water right is abandoned, that means it is removed from the record, okay? So it's removed from the record, it's removed from essentially the water budget in that area. And so that water right, that abandoned water right will not be available for somebody else like that. The paper, I know you, sorry, I'm trying to use, I know you said that term is confusing. I get it, so I'm trying not to use that. But that water right number will not be available for somebody else to purchase, or we're not going to auction it. When I say that water will be available to somebody else, what I'm saying is if I've been diverting water, if I have a water right and I've been diverting it off a stream for years, and then I stop using it and I don't file a claim on that, I don't have a right to divert that water anymore. So it's just going to bypass what was historically my point of diversion and be available downstream to others. What I talked about somebody being able to file an application to appropriate for a new water right, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's a new water right. It's going to have a new priority date, which is junior to everything else on the system. So they only get their water if water is available. Okay, does that help explain that a little bit? Okay, so the question is, if a system was not fully appropriated, how does somebody go about getting a water right? And the question was further, does somebody come into our office and buy the water right from our office? No, we do not sell water rights. What would happen is somebody would come in, if the area is open to new appropriations, they could file an application to appropriate. And it's important to remember that water law in Utah is based on the doctrine of prior appropriation. So first in time, first in right. So when I say a priority date, what I mean is a priority date is when a water right was first put to use. And so essentially, if there's 50 CFS available in a stream, I have a water right for 20 CFS. Somebody else has a water right for 40 CFS. If I'm senior in priority, I get my full 20 CFS before they get their water. So when we say that water is available for somebody else in the system, it just means that water is not being used anymore. We are removing it from the record. And then in real life on the ground, that water that was used by that person is available for somebody else. And if that area is open to new appropriations, someone can file an application to appropriate, but they are going to have a senior priority, the opposite. They will have a junior priority date. So everybody else in the system or from that source will receive their full allocation before that new appropriator. So the question is if there's criteria for somebody to apply for a water right, and the answer is no. It's people can file an application to appropriate. Go ahead. Yeah, so I have a slide on that. We got a little bit off course here. I'm gonna ask if people have other questions that are not related specifically to what the process looks like. Again, I'll get to the timeline. We will have more questions, and then I also want to say we will stick around after the presentation. We have a handful of water rights employees here, and we will answer your specific questions, okay? And most of these have been kind of more general questions, so I've answered them. But if somebody has a specific question about their water right, we will stick around after and chat with you about it, okay? Yes, sir. So the question is, what's funding the adjudication program? It's funding from the legislature. So, okay, I'm gonna get us back on track here. I appreciate the questions. Like I said, we'll have another opportunity for questions later on, but I want to get back on track here. So here's our timeline, okay? So as I said, May 5th of this, or May 15th of this year, we will send out the notice to file claims, and there will be 90 days for everybody to get their claims in, okay? There is one basically automatic 30-day extension to file claims, but that needs to be requested in writing within that 90-day period. Okay, and I'll put up more information on that in a little bit. So with that May 15th notice to file claims going out, then 90 days later, plus that 30-day extension, that pushes us to September. That's when we will begin investigating some of these claims. We are hoping that phase 2, that list of unclaimed rights, will be completed by February of 2026. And like I said, we'll come back out, we'll have another public meeting, and there will be a 90-day objection period for anybody to file an objection on any of the rights in that list of unclaimed rights. And then we're hoping by December of 2027, we will finish evaluating all of these rights and publish the proposed determination. Again, we'll have another public meeting and then that objection period. And then once we get through those objections, motion for an interlocutory decree. Okay, so that's our planned timeline. Okay, so now before we jump back into another Q&A, we'll talk about some other frequently asked questions. So first, why isn't my name on a water right? So water user's claim does not update title, okay? That being said, anybody can file a claim on another water right. So, well, let me rephrase that. Even if my name is not on the water right on the state engineer's records, I can file a water user's claim on that right, okay? But we can also help you submit what's called a report of water right conveyance, and that is the mechanism to update title to a water right. Okay? Every now and then we come across lapsed applications. And so lapsed applications for small amounts of water, and that's defined in statute, they can be reinstated, but that individual needs to file a water user's claim and an affidavit of beneficial use. If you're in this boat, please contact us and we can help walk you through that process. More on these 30-day extensions. So the 30-day extensions must be requested in writing during that original 90-day period, okay? They can be emailed either to myself directly or waterrights_adjudication@utah.gov. When we get done here, like I said, we'll stick around and answer questions, and we'll have contact information up on the screen, okay? So then we kind of started talking about this. Will I lose my water right? So as I've said, water users who are using their water right in conformance with the records on file have nothing to worry about. They'll file a water user's claim. We'll go out and evaluate that. We'll put together a state engineer's recommendation, send that out to you. As I've said, though, statute says that if a water right has not been used for a period of 7 years, it may be subject to forfeiture, and that has to go through the court. So again, if we send out our recommendation and you disagree with it, let us know, and we can reevaluate, or we can look at what information you have, and we can work through that. And then if you still disagree with our recommendation, you can file an objection through the court. Okay, and then individuals using water without a water right of record, this is what I've talked about, those pre-statutory water uses, you need to file a water user's claim. So on that note, we'll go back to questions, and then I'll answer a few questions, and then I'll show you some stuff on our website. I'll give you a tour of the website, and then if we need to, we can answer more questions. And then, like I said, we'll stick around and answer more questions. I know there's one online. This gentleman's had his hand up for a while, so I'll go to him first. Okay, so the question is, how does it affect a change of application and a certificate of beneficial use? So there are protections in statute from forfeiture due to approved change applications and things like that. If you want to stick around after, I'd be happy to talk about your specific situation. And please, with the questions with the group, try to keep them general. If you have questions about your specific situation, we'd be happy to chat with you afterward. Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
Talk about mandating meters on wells. Is that a true thing or?
So the question is about mandates for meters on wells. I know in certain cases, like for municipalities, there are requirements to meter wells, or for large amounts of water use, I think exceeding 100 acre feet, there can be requirements. If you're asking about a specific thing, I don't know of further mandates on top of that to answer your question. But if you have a question about a specific thing, I'd be happy to chat with you after. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Okay, so the question is, when we say if a water right is being used, then you have nothing to worry about, but do we look to the past to look for periods of non-use? So according to statute, we can look back 15 years. We typically don't. I say typically, maybe I shouldn't say that, but typically if we go out and we see the infrastructure and everything's being used, then we'll usually just issue our recommendation. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Okay, so the question is, what is the piece of statute that refers to forfeiture through non-use? I believe it's Title 73, Chapter 1, Section 4, I believe. It's in Title 73. I can look that up later and we can look at it together if you'd like. Okay. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
As to what conformance required, what specifically is needed to be in conformance? I mean, our particular property has a number of different uses. So what does it have to be in conformance? Does it have to have a house on it, pond water out of the well? Does it have to have animal in it? Does it have to have trees? What's the
Okay. So the question is, what needs to be in place for a water right to be in conformance? So first of all, I'm going to go back to, we only adjudicate perfected water rights. The reason that is important is, I've mentioned a few times applications to appropriate. Those have a process to become perfected. And when I say a perfected water right, I mean that the point of diversion is developed, the beneficial uses are in place. And so I bring that up before I answer your question just to say we only adjudicate perfected rights. And so whatever rights are approved and perfected, whatever uses are perfected on that water right, that is what we will be looking at to see if that's in use. Does that answer your question? So if there's, for example, if the water right has 1 domestic use, 10 livestock, and a 1/4 acre of irrigation, when we go out and look, those are the uses we're going to be looking for. Okay? Okay. Other questions? There's, the one online, sorry. Is the town of Apple Valley looking around the vicinity for more water? I don't know. You'd have to talk to Apple Valley. Okay. Other questions? Was that the only one online? Okay. And question asker online, I'm sorry that you got kind of brushed over for a little bit there. Okay. Yes, sir. Did you say if you previously filed a water user's claim or a ROC? A report of conveyance? Yeah, so even if you filed a report of conveyance, you need to file a water user's claim. If in doubt, if you take anything away from this meeting, if in doubt, please file a water user's claim. That is very, very important. I can't stress that enough. And really, we are more than happy to help you fill out those claims. Okay, any other? Yeah, yes, sir. Okay, so the question is, does a report of conveyance change the priority of a water right? The answer is no. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into a website demonstration to show you, or a website tour, show you how to search our map, how to do a water right number search or an owner search, and then look at the Gould Wash information on our website. If I can. All right. So this is Skylar, I'm going to sign you out. Okay. I want to show you the public-facing version of the website. Anyway. Okay. So this is the homepage of our website. It's waterrights.utah.gov. Okay. I've signed out, so everything that we show on the screen here is what you can see on the public-facing website. Okay. First thing I want to show you is if you come up to the top left and go to Programs, go down to Water Rights, and come over to Search. You scroll down here, you can search by a water right number, this name or source. You can search by owner name or some other things there. What most people find success with is this map search. So if we go to this map search, it pulls up the state, and we can just zoom in here, and bear with me, it's really clunky on a laptop pad. If we come down here, these are all points of diversion, okay? The different colors represent different sources, whether it's an underground well or a surface source, things like that. If we go and click on one of these, then this little tab comes up. You can click on the water right number here, and it will take you to our database, okay? So then you scroll through here, you can see the file date, the priority date, quantity of water, things like that, the beneficial uses. Then if you go back and view map from the water rights database side, it will show you the point of diversion, should show you a place of use. Of course, I picked one that doesn't, because it probably has a more unique place of use. But that's how you can view a map of your water right. Go back to our home page, and if you scroll down here, you can see adjudication. So this is a video that explains the adjudication process. Some of you may have gone here after that summons packet and watch that video. You can come down here, learn more about the adjudication, click on active adjudications, and from here, Gould Wash is down at the bottom. You can click a map. This will take you back to our map, but this will have the division boundary drawn, and it will have all the points of diversion showing automatically. You can zoom in, find your property, and if there's an icon there, that means that there's a water right of record on that property or wherever the point of diversion is. Another thing to keep in mind, whether we include a water right or not in an adjudication is based on the location of the point of diversion. Okay? So another page that may be helpful to you. You go back to active adjudications, back to this page. If you click here, this shows you our progress of this Gould Wash adjudication. You can see a specific water right number. It'll have one of these statuses, so you can check on our progress that way. Okay. One other thing, if I click into one of these, we have all of the documents associated with any of these water rights we have on our files, either the regional office in Cedar City or in Salt Lake, but we also have them on our website. Okay, so from here, if you go scan documents, I automatically sort by date, and there's all of these different documents in here that you can view. Okay, like I said, this is all public facing. We have all of this information on here. We try to be as transparent as we possibly can. Okay. And we also have a water user claim. So if you go to our website and you get to this page, you notice up here, there's a button to file a water user's claim. So you can click that and it will help, it'll walk you through how to file this claim. So you can either check one of these owners if that's you, or you can fill in what your information is. And if you walk through this wizard, it will help you select a point of diversion from a map. You can input your beneficial uses, things like that, and it will generate one of those water users claims. Okay, like I said, we'll mail you one, but this is an easy way to fill one out if there's things on it you'd like to change. And when we send out those water users claims, if you want to change something on it, you can cross it out and fill in whatever you want. It's your claim. Sign it, send it back to us. Okay. I think that's what I wanted to show you on the website. Any questions about the website? Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So from our homepage, if you scroll down, the question was, where do you find the PowerPoint? Go down to adjudication. Scroll down, and this button here, adjudication status, this will have a lot of good information about this. All of the court documents will be stored on here. So you scroll down, sorry, it's kind of slightly hidden, but if you come down and find Gould Wash, click that. The commencement information is here, and then we already have the slides put up. So I don't know if you saw where I clicked there, but it says initial public meeting date, and you click that, and then it pulls up these slides. Okay, so that's already on our website. You can go look at that right now if you want to. All right. Any other questions about the website? Yes, sir. Okay, so the question is if there's a summary page for the progress of the adjudication, and up here in the top right, there's this adjudication progress button. It shows the number of claims here, and if you click these certain criteria, it will update the number of displays. So that's how you can track that. Yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes. So this video, this presentation will be uploaded to our YouTube page as well. Okay. All right. What I'm going to do. So here's our contact information. Are there any other questions, like general questions that can be answered in front of the group? Otherwise, we'll end the stream. We'll end this, and our staff will be available for questions. Any other? Okay. So what if a municipality wants to claim a right? Municipalities, as I was mentioning earlier, municipalities have their own portfolio of water rights, and they will be filing water users claims on their water rights. Okay. So at this point, I will be around. We have John Hagwood. Can I have the water rights employees raise their hands? So there's John, there's Skylar, a couple over here. If you have questions, come find one of us. We'll stick around as long as we need to. Thank you.
We're new to town.